So thank you for this opportunity, ILSI. And I think this is a really progressive platform where risk-based approaches are being deliberated. And I think it marks a stage in the history of our country where we are going to make a step change in this area. I'm going to talk about how we, as a multinational company operating in several countries, look at food safety and use that as a kind of an illustration of how an industry can partner globally in progressing food safety initiatives across the world. Firstly, as far as Unilever is concerned, the safety is set out in our fundamental code of business principles, where we talk about employees, safety and healthy of their working conditions, consumers, to produce safe products for their intended use, the environment, where we promote the environmental care, and whatever innovations we drive to the market are based on sound science and rigorous standards of products. And therefore, accordingly, we have policies on consumer safety, health and safety at work, and environment. And the organization within Unilever R&D, where I work for, that is Safety Environmental Assurance Center, has been delegated this responsibility for safety assessments. And what we do, we use authoritative scientific evidence and guidance to help and identify, manage risks for consumers, workers, and environment. We also, at the same time, measure environmental impacts and sustainability related things for Unilever's brands, products, and supply chain. So basically, we leverage our scientific expertise and external partnership in safety and sustainability, which leads to safe and sustainable design and execution of innovation and technology. The pictures you see here are of two locations, SEAC Colworth, UK, in England, and SEAC Bangalore, India, which is based at Unilever R&D Center in Bangalore. And basically, when it comes to safe and sustainable products, processes, and design, we use an integrated approach which focuses not only on consumer, but also the workmen who manufacture that product or technology, as well as the environmental effect. And we capture all these in a transparent and an accessible manner, where the data, expertise, the safety decisions are risk-based and are captured in systems which can be then retrieved. And across this continuum of unacceptable risk to acceptable risk, we would like to operate in a manner where consumer, occupation, and environment risks are in the acceptable region. Now, to give you a little bit more information of how we actually operationalize these principles, if we were to look at the entire value chain of a product, yeah, right from raw materials to product getting formulated as a formulation, then it gets transferred to the factory workshop for manufacturing, it gets transported, eventually leading to consumer use, and then the consumer uses and disposes part or whole of that product depending on the kind of product. So in the very early part of the innovation cycle, we would be focusing on the consumer risks, the occupational risks, and environmental hazards, wherein we would be looking at key data that is either available or needs to be generated. One might be doing clinical trials with consumers, and that also gives us a lot of insights onto what could be the risks, and therefore drives those decisions across whether a particular technology is safe or not. And then obviously, once the product is near the consumer end in the market, we also get more information about how the consumer uses it, what are the exposure scenarios, and that helps us refine our risks through formal post-launch monitoring if it is required. And if innovation goes in the form of a funnel, then the key steps to establishing food safety is firstly identify realistic hazards, agree on what are the product safety benchmarks with all the stakeholders inside the organization, so be it the innovation partners, be it regulatory affairs, be it patents, come together and then establish effective preventive and control measures. So the product or a new concept would move from ideas, feasibility, capability, launch, preparation, post-launch evaluation, and rollout. And across this entire chain, safety would be involved so that the innovation is guided to make the safest decision in the interest of the consumer. Now, this was an overview of what are the principles that Unilever uses in terms of managing overall consumer safety, occupation, and environment. Since we have a very wide portfolio, which is foods and other home and personal care, I will now focus for the rest of the time something on food safety. Now, it is a big dilemma for regulator as well as the consumer because of the very high complexity, so many choices and so many issues. And in fact, I must really compliment FSSAI. I was seeing they have used that value chain approach in identifying all the stakeholders of the FBOs, and therefore they are trying to address the entire value chain as far as food safety is concerned. And also the fact that nothing is absolutely safe, whether any material will cause any adverse impact depends on several factors, yeah? And that is the basis of risk assessment. Now, coming to safety risk assessment, how we go about doing it, yeah? So, firstly, we should think about an ingredient or a product. As far as its safety is concerned, it is a function of, firstly, what are the possible hazards, yeah? Then, what are the safety concerns on account of a functionality? So, let's say that there is even a vitamin, it is necessary to for a certain function, yeah? But then, beyond a point, that itself can be risky because of the dose, yeah? So, how much will be the consumer exposed to? What are the typical practices? Does a consumer use it, say, 5 grams a day, 50 grams a day, and can the consumer actually overuse or abuse it? What are those windows, yeah? How much is the amount of that active ingredient in the finished product, yeah? So, we look at all these, but at the same time, we also consider the environment, occupation, and as well as sustainability impacts. Coming to risk management, there are typically 3 large pillars of this. It has been already discussed, so I won't really take much time on this, but primarily to identify and characterize hazards, we will be depending on epidemiology, toxicology and microbiology, and generate data and predictions. When it comes to characterizing the risks, we should be asking questions around severity, how much is the exposure, and what is the susceptibility of the population. And when it comes to management of the risk, we should understand what are the control measures available, yeah? How quickly you can tell the consumer that there is something that you should be concerned about. What are the regulations and what are the means and channels of communication? And all this should be documented in a transparent manner so that it can be retrieved and used when it is required. Now, coming to risk-based thinking, what were the early beginnings? And Paracelsus is considered the father of toxicology. And according to him, all things are poison and nothing is without poison, only the dose permits something not to be poisonous. And I would really highlight this classic case of pure water, yeah, which can cause fatal disturbance in brain function that results in disruption of normal balance of electrolytes in the body, where hyperhydration can occur. It occurs when large amounts of water are consumed, particularly within short periods of time. And many athletes have actually suffered from this, where electrolytes are depleted and then when they consume excessive amounts of water. So we cannot really pinpoint that something is absolutely safe. It all depends on the context in which it is consumed, applied, the amount, dose, etc. And therefore, increasingly, what are the new thoughts around risk assessments, yeah? And how it is going to evolve in the future. It's already taking shape. And one thing is that the making a quantitative decision around risk is going to be the manner in which this will be driven. And there will be a lot of questions of the type whether, let's say that there is a contaminant and whether its residues are present at ppb levels or ppm levels, yeah? What is the severity, whether it leads to a minor illness, hospitalization, or fatality? What is the fraction of the population at risk? How much is consumed? What is the serving size, yeah? And amongst all this, there is also a need to address what is the uncertainty, because if you know the uncertainty, the probability of unknown, then you can attribute some certain factors to that and therefore make your risk assessments more refined. And here I give you an example which some of my expert microbiologists have published a few years ago. Leon is also one of the authors on this paper, which is about a certain food which has a potential of getting contaminated with Bacillus cereus spores. So what all things were considered to do this risk assessment? So the first chart you see is the raw material contamination and the distribution you see there. So how many spores you see in that raw materials, yeah, per gram. And you see a bell-shaped curve over there, firstly. Then secondly, what is the variability of the spores in terms of their heat resistance? And again, there you have a typical bell-shaped curve, which then gets translated into this very colorful model, which tells you that what is the window of the number of spores as well as their variability to heat that has got kind of consolidated into a 3D model, which then helps decision making to tell us that what could be the predicted survivors in a pack or in a can of spores. And that allows us to make a decision whether you need to change the manufacturing process to take care of spores in a manner that less numbers are present when the consumers are using the product. So in short, this is the manner in which we are driving risk-based approaches into the business space. How do we really make it work? So there are basically 3 streams in our organization around food safety. The first is around product development. So when the formulator is trying to make a new product, what are the typical science and technology tools that will be used in product development? So if I were to look at an example for microbiological hazards, then this chart will give you an idea of how we look at the entire process. So firstly, we will use predictive models where we know how organisms behave in certain food matrices, yeah? And that will tell us, give us a window of opportunity there, okay, this pathogen under the particular food condition may or may not be hazardous. We then apply hurdle technology to ensure that the microorganism does not grow to a point where it can pose a threat to human health. We do shelf life studies, packaging development, formulation, and process design. Now, all the learnings from this are transferred to the process development, the team which is now entrusted with the task of actually manufacturing the product in a large scale, from the lab bench to the manufacturing scale, where all the microbiology, toxicology, physical hazard risk assessments are in place. That goes into development of a HACCP plan. The production and distribution, the factories are already having GMPs. The raw material suppliers are approved. We have an approved HACCP plan and distribution control. And it is all augmented by audits at right intervals. And that's how we get from a safe design, safe manufacturing, storage, and distribution to safe food. So just to reiterate, the a hazard-based approach is a usually checklist-based compliance, where it involves a lot of redundant testing, does not consider how a product is used, and it is typically yes and no decisions, and uncertainties are not explored. Whereas a risk-based approach is expertise and evidence-driven. There is data, there is a lot of science behind it. Only essential testing, which is mainly used to validate what was the assumed hypothesis. The product use exposure determines the outcome, and options to manage the risks are already outlined. So you know if there was anything untoward happen, how would you manage it? And the uncertainties also are explicit. And this is the evolution of the food industry in terms of food safety. To begin with, the foundation stone was laid in terms of organization employing good hygienic practices, agricultural practices, and good manufacturing practices. These were further sharpened to really look at those critical risks by developing HACCP, those hazards by developing HACCP. And now we have a risk-based approach for managing the hazards, yeah? And this has been advocated by all organizations. We have already heard that in the morning, and maybe this will evolve further into something else 10, 15 years down the line. So, but this is the current framework of risk analysis that is accepted by WHO and CODEX. Coming to the national priority, food safety, and I think establishment of FSSAI is a key milestone for the country. What we now need to work together is to evolve a modern science-based, risk-based food safety system. And I think good foundations of that have already been laid. We need to strengthen the health surveillance system, and that also has been repeatedly brought up. We also need to have a robust assessment of health issues related to foods, and there were some questions around the data that was spoken about. A need to have global capabilities, resources, expertise, and infrastructure. Also, a good laboratory infrastructure, especially where we need to analyze contaminants, wide-ranging contaminants, and data and insight around the stages at which contamination occurs throughout the food chain. So right from raw materials till manufacturing, and even at the consumer use end, whether contaminants can be creeping in. Yeah, we need to know, because only if you know, we can control it. Yeah. How do we get into a risk assessment, management, and communication in terms of our capabilities, and doing away with the hazard-based mindset into a risk-based mindset, and opportunities to consider national and international collaborations, and indeed, like FSNet, such as organizations that exist across Europe and US, can we consider instituting a national food safety network? Coming to how we see as the role of industry, firstly, industry has in-depth scientific knowledge and technical knowledge of hazards and risk relating to food and commodity that it typically uses. Yeah, it also has understanding of issues. Example, contamination, where it is going. Whether pesticide is coming into a food product through the water, or it is coming through the agricultural, for example. Yeah. Access to global expertise and capabilities, and knowledge of evolving regulatory scenario across the world. With these as an input, how we can build the capability for the country. We can certainly provide expertise in key areas relating to food safety. We can provide linkages with key opinion former, academic and industry scientists, and have access to global networks. We can also provide materials, inputs, and resources for training in the areas of food product safety and risk assessment, and also provide support to develop, maintain, and roll out of IT tools and data structures. In fact, these are some examples like Food Safety International Network, the Food Safety Network, etc., which we should think about in the interest of the country. Finally, I would think it is the industry, academia, and regulation all have one common platform, and that is science relating to food, food safety, foodborne pathogens, toxicology, etc., that can bind us together so that we can together work for health and safety for the consumer and the country. Yeah? Thank you. I'll be happy to take any questions.